The moon of Xylos was a quiet place. It was a place where things were forgotten. The sky was a pale purple color, and the ground was dry and cracked. In a large valley there was a salvage yard. It was a graveyard for old spaceships. The Galactic Empire had won a war against humans many years ago. After the war, they made all human technology illegal. They said it was too dangerous. Then, they gathered up all the old human ships they could find and brought them here to rot. The salvage yard was run by an old man named Day. He was a human who kept his head down. He made a living by selling old parts from non-human ships. He was a practical man. He did not like to take risks. One of the ships in his yard was very large. It was a human warship, a Dreadnought. Its name was the Unyielding Will. The Empire had attacked this ship during the war. They had used special weapons to burn out its computer brain and its main power systems. They thought the ship was dead. They left it in the yard like a giant metal skeleton, but the ship was not completely dead. A young man named Jin worked for Day. Jin was a mechanic. He was quiet and liked to be alone with machines. He understood them in a way that other people did not. For 3 years, Jin had been secretly working on the Unyielding Will. He knew a secret about the ship. The Empire had killed its primary systems, but the human engineers who built it were clever. They had built a second, hidden set of systems. These systems were simple and used old-fashioned parts. The Empire, with their advanced technology, had not even noticed them. They never checked for something so basic. Today, Jin was inside the ship. He was in a small room deep inside the hull. This was the secondary control room. The only light came from his portable lamp. The air was cold and smelled of oil and old metal. He was connecting a new power cable. His hands were covered in black grease. He worked carefully. A single mistake could cause a short circuit. Or worse, it could create an energy signal that the Empire's sensors might notice. He heard footsteps echoing in the hallway. He was not afraid. He knew who it was. A young woman named Mina stepped into the room. She was a pilot and a scavenger. She often went to other old shipyards to find parts for Jin. She was brave and quick-thinking. She was also Jin's only friend. "You are going to get us caught, Jin," she said. Her voice was calm, but he could hear the worry in it. Jin did not look up from his work. "No, I am not. The Empire does not care about this place. They think this ship is junk. They will care if you turn it on," Mina said. She looked around the dark room. "What is the point of all this? Even if you can make the lights work, it is still a dead ship. We cannot fly it. We cannot fight with it." "It is not about fighting," Jin said. He finally connected the cable. A small red light on the console began to glow. A slow, steady blink. "It is about proving that they are wrong. They think human tech is weak. They think we are weak. But this ship, it is stronger than they know." Mina shook her head. She did not understand his obsession, but she trusted him. She had brought him a new part today. A small computer processor from an old human transport ship. It was not powerful, but Jin said it would work with the ship's old systems. "Did Day see you come in?" Jin asked. "No," Mina said. "He is in his office. He is looking at the new rules from the Empire." Jin stopped what he was doing. "What new rules?" Mina's face became serious. "The Empire is getting stricter. They say all human technology must be destroyed, not just left in yards. They are going to start checking the yards. They are going to melt everything down for scrap metal." Jin looked at the blinking red light. His project was in more danger than ever. He had to work faster. Later that day, Jin went to see Day. The old man's office was a small building made from an old ship container. It was messy inside. There were old parts and computer screens everywhere. Day was sitting at his desk. He looked tired. He saw Jin and pointed to a screen. "You have seen this?" On the screen was the official order from the Galactic Empire. It talked about the cleansing of human technology. It said that inspections would begin soon. "I have seen it," Jin said. "Then you know we have a problem," Dee said. "My business is built on this junk. I sell parts from alien ships, but if they start digging around, they will find what you are doing in that human Dreadnought. They will send us all to a labor camp." "We can hide it," Jin said. "We can cover the ship with sheets. We can say it is just a hull for storage." Day laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "You are a dreamer, Jin. You cannot hide a mountain. That ship is a mountain. When the inspectors come, they will see it. And they will ask questions." Jin was silent for a moment. What if it was not here when they came? Day stared at him. What are you talking about? How do you move a mountain? The engines are dead. The power core is cold. It is a rock. Maybe not for long, Jin said quietly. Day leaned forward. His voice was low and serious. Listen to me, boy. I have let you play in that ship because it kept you quiet and it did not cost me anything. But this is over now. This is not a game. The Empire does not give second chances. You need to stop. Take whatever little parts you have saved and forget about it. Jin did not argue. He just nodded and left the office. He knew Day was scared. He was right to be scared. But Jin could not stop. The unyielding will was more than just a ship to him. It was a symbol of what humans could do. That night, Jin and Mina met inside the ship. Jin had brought the new processor. He showed Mina the secondary control room. The red light was still blinking. This is the heart, Jin said, pointing to the console. The Empire never found it. It is simple, but it is strong. With this new processor, I can start the first-level power sequence. What does that mean? Mina asked. It means the ship will wake up, Jin said. A little. Not enough to fly, but enough to show that it is alive. He installed the processor. It was a tight fit and he had to rewire several connections. Mina held the light for him. She watched his hands work. She saw how sure and calm he was. He was never this calm when he was talking to people. After an hour, he was finished. He stepped back. Okay, now we try. He pressed a series of physical switches. They were large metal switches that made a satisfying clunk sound. This was another human design. Most ships use touchscreens. But physical switches never got viruses. They never crashed. He flipped the last switch. For a second, nothing happened. Then the single red light was joined by a dozen others. A low hum started to vibrate through the floor. It was a deep sound, like a giant beast breathing in its sleep. A screen above the console flickered to life. It showed simple green text. Secondary systems, online power core, standby, life support, standby. Propulsion, offline weapons, offline. Mina stared at the screen. Her mouth was open. She had never really believed Jin could do it. She thought he was just fixing a broken machine. But this was different. The ship was not broken. It was sleeping. And now it was starting to wake up. You did it, she whispered. This is only the beginning, Jin said. He looked at the glowing screen. There was no excitement on his face, only determination. Now we have to teach it to walk again. Outside in the dark of the Xylos night, the unyielding will sat silently. It looked the same as always. A giant silent monument of rust and metal, but deep inside a heart had started to beat. A slow, steady rhythm that promised something new. The Empire had outlawed human technology, but they had made one mistake. They never checked the salvage yards for a heartbeat. The low hum from the unyielding will was now a constant presence. For Jin and Mina, it was the sound of their secret. For Old Day, it was the sound of his impending doom. He stood in his office, staring out the window at the massive dark shape of the Dreadnought. He could not hear the hum from here, but he felt it in his bones. He knew Jin had done something stupid. A week had passed since the first power-up. Jin and Mina worked every night. The ship was still a ghost, but now it was a ghost with a pulse. Lights flickered in its deep corridors. Air, stale but breathable, circulated through the vents. Jin's focus was on the engines. They were cold and dark. The primary fusion core was a dead piece of metal, but the ship had secondary thrusters. They were meant for small movements in a space dock. They were simple chemical fuel rockets. The Empire had not bothered to drain them. If we can light these, Jin said to Mina, his voice echoing in the vast engine room, we can move the ship. Not fast, but we can move it. Move it where? Mina asked. She was holding a schematic on a dusty data slate. This is not a starship right now, Jin. It is a building. A very heavy building. We do not need to fly, Jin explained patiently. We just need to not be here when the inspectors come. Day said the inspection is in 10 days. We can move the ship behind the large rock ridge on the other side of the scrapyard. It will be hidden from view. It was a desperate plan. But it was a plan. Their problem was fuel. The thrusters needed a chemical mix to fire. The tanks were old and mostly empty. They needed to find the right chemicals in the scrapyard and pump them into the ship without anyone noticing. This was Mina's job. While Jin worked on the engine ignition sequences, she scavenged. She went out every day into the vast field of broken ships. She looked for old fuel pods from pre-Empire cargo haulers. She found a few, but they were often corroded or empty. One afternoon, she hit a problem. She was inside the wreck of a Zarkonian freighter, looking for a specific valve when she heard the distinct sound of an Imperial shuttle. Her blood went cold. It was too early. The inspectors were not due for days. She hid behind a broken console and looked out a cracked window. The shuttle was not an inspection vessel. It was a military dropship. It landed near Day's office. 2 Imperial soldiers in white armor got out. They were followed by an officer. He stood straight and looked at the salvage yard with a look of disgust. Mina stayed perfectly still. She watched as Day came out of his office. He looked small and nervous. The officer talked to him. Mina was too far away to hear the words, but she saw the officer point directly at the unyielding will. Day was shaking his head. He was talking fast, his hands moving. He was probably saying the ship was just a hollow shell, a piece of history. The officer did not look convinced. He nodded to one of the soldiers. The soldier pulled out a scanner and pointed it at the Dreadnought. Mina's heart hammered in her chest. The scanner would detect the power signatures. It would find the humming secondary systems. It was over. She had to warn Jin. He was inside the ship, completely unaware. She waited until the soldier and the officer turned to look at another part of the yard. Then she slipped out of the freighter and ran. She moved between piles of scrap metal, using them as cover. She reached the large hatch she and Jin used to get inside. She crawled in and scrambled through the dark corridors toward the engine room. "Jin," she yelled, her voice frantic. Jin looked up from a tangled mess of wires. He saw the fear on her face. "What is it?" "Empire outside." "An officer and soldiers. They have a scanner." "They were scanning the ship." Jin dropped his tools. His calm face finally showed panic. He ran to a small monitor he had set up. It was connected to an external camera, hidden under a layer of rust. The view was grainy, but he could see the officer, the soldiers, and Day. The soldier was still looking at his scanner. "The power is low. The signal is weak. Maybe the scanner will not notice," Jin said. But he did not believe it. Down by his office, Day was sweating. The officer was Commander Park. He was a young, ambitious man. He was here because he had heard rumors about this yard. Rumors of a man who asked too many questions about human tech. "It is just an old hull, Commander," Day said, his voice shaky. "I use it for storage. There is nothing inside." Commander Park did not look at Day. He watched his soldier. "The scanner is very sensitive, old man. It can detect a single power cell from a kilometer away. If there is anything active in that wreck, we will know." The soldier looked up from his device. "Commander, I'm getting a reading. It is very faint, a low-level energy signature, consistent with a secondary power system." Park's face hardened. He turned to Day. "You lied." "No, it must be a mistake. Maybe it is a rodent nest with a stolen battery." "I do not know," Day pleaded. "We will see," Park said. He signaled to his soldiers. "Secure the perimeter. I want a team inside that ship. Arrest anyone you find." Inside the ship, Jin and Mina heard the order through the external microphone. "They are coming in," Mina whispered. Her face was pale. "What do we do?" Jin looked around the engine room. His eyes landed on the main thruster control panel. It was not ready. It was a mess of wires and temporary connections, but it was all they had. "We light the engines," he said. "What?" "They are not ready." "You said it would take 3 more days." "We do not have 3 days," Jin said. He started grabbing tools. "We do not have 3 minutes. Go to the secondary control room. I need you on the ship's internal comms. I will talk to you from here." Mina ran. Her footsteps echoed in the empty halls. She could already hear the sounds of the Imperial soldiers at the main airlock. They were using a laser cutter to burn through the door they could not open. Jin worked faster than he ever had in his life. His hands were a blur. He connected the final ignition wire. It was a dangerous direct connection. It could blow up in his face. But he had no choice. He spoke into a small handheld radio. "Mina, the sequence is not programmed. I have to do it manually. When I say you need to send the all systems confirm signal from the control room, it will trick the computer into thinking everything is safe." "Okay." Mina's voice came back tight with fear. The sound of the cutting torch was louder now. A spot on the main airlock door began to glow red, then white. Jin took a deep breath. He looked at the series of large physical switches for the portside thrusters. This was it. They had enough fuel for one short, powerful burst. It would move the ship. Or it would tear the old engines apart. Now, Mina. Send the signal! In the control room, Mina pressed a button. A green light lit up on her console. Outside, Commander Park watched as his team almost had the airlock open. He was already thinking of the report he would write. How he had uncovered a nest of human tech sympathizers. Then the world shook. It started as a deep, grating roar from the base of the Dreadnought. A huge cloud of dust and rust exploded out from underneath it. The ground vibrated so hard that Park almost fell over. He looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. The unyielding will, the mountain of junk, was moving. It slid forward with a terrifying, slow grace. It was not flying. It was dragging itself across the ground, tearing a deep furrow in the dirt. The sound was deafening. Metal screeched and groaned. The Imperial soldiers scattered, diving away from the moving mountain. Inside the engine room, Jin was thrown against a wall. Alarms blared. The temporary connections sparked and smoked. But he saw the external camera view on his monitor. They were moving. The ship was sliding away from the office, away from the soldiers. He laughed. It was a wild, crazy sound. In the control room, Mina held onto her chair. She saw the view from the front camera. The scrapyard was moving past them. They were heading toward the large rock ridge just as Jin had planned. The thrusters burned for 20 seconds. Then with a final cough, they died. The ship slid to a stop, its nose tucked behind the large ridge. Dust settled around it like a blanket. Silence returned to the salvage yard. Commander Park stood up. His white uniform was covered in dust. He looked at the ship, now half hidden behind the ridge. Then he looked at Day. The old man had a look of pure shock on his face. Park walked over to Day. His face was cold with anger. "You," he said, his voice quiet and dangerous. "You will tell me everything. Who is on that ship? What have you done?" Day just stared at the unyielding will. He had thought Jin was a fool, a dreamer, but he had just made a dead ship walk, and in doing so, he had signed all of their death warrants. The Empire had outlawed human tech. Now they had just seen it wake up. And Commander Park was not a man who would let such an insult go unpunished. The silence after the thrusters died was heavier than the noise had been. Inside the unyielding will, Jin picked himself up from the floor. The engine room was filled with the smell of smoke and burned wiring. Red emergency lights flashed, casting long, dancing shadows. He could hear the hiss of a broken coolant pipe. He grabbed his radio. "Mina, are you okay?" Her voice came back, shaky but clear. "I am okay." "What did you do?" "I bought us a little time," Jin said. He looked at his monitor. The external camera showed a wall of rock. They were hidden for now. The thrusters are finished. But we moved. Outside, Commander Park's anger was a cold, sharp thing. He stood amidst the settling dust, his pristine white uniform now a dirty gray. He had 2 soldiers hold the old man, Day, by his arms. "Who is in that ship?" Park asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Day's mind raced. He was a practical man. He needed to save himself. "A mechanic," he stammered. "His name is Jin. He is just a boy. He is obsessed with that ship. I told him to stop. He would not listen." "A boy?" Park's eyes narrowed. "A boy just brought a 500,000-ton Dreadnought to life." "Who else?" "A girl, Mina. She helps him." "They are scavengers." "That is all." "They are not soldiers. They are not rebels," Day was pleading now. "I am just an old man who runs a scrapyard. I did not know they could do this." Park believed him. The fear in the old man's eyes was real. He was small, a nobody. But the people in that ship? They were a problem. Letting a human warship activate was a failure. A failure that would end his career. He could not allow anyone to know this happened. He turned to his squad leader. "This location is now a quarantine zone. No one enters or leaves. No signals go out. Is that understood?" The soldier nodded. "Yes, Commander." Park looked toward the ridge where the ship was hidden. "They have nowhere to go. They are trapped in a broken ship. We will go in and remove them quietly." Back inside the ship, Jin and Mina met in the secondary control room. The main screen showed warnings in red text. "Port thruster system offline. Hull breach deck 7 primary power offline." "We cannot stay here," Mina said. "They will come for us." "I know," Jin replied. He was already at another console pulling up a new schematic. The thrusters are dead. But the main engines? The primary fusion core? It might be possible. Mina stared at him. The Empire burned it out. You said it was a dead piece of metal. The primary system is dead, but the structure is still there. Jin's eyes were focused, his mind working fast. The fusion core is like a heart. The Empire stabbed it, but we do not need it to beat perfectly. We just need one pulse. One single powerful heartbeat to jump us out of here. And how do we make a dead heartbeat? Mina asked. With a jump start, Jin said. The ship has massive capacitor banks. They store energy for the weapons. The weapons are gone, but the capacitors might still hold a charge. If we can divert all the power from the secondary systems, plus every battery we can find in this scrapyard, into the capacitors, and then dump it all into the fusion core at once. It might turn on for a few seconds. Long enough for a short jump into space. It was a crazy plan. It could just as easily vaporize the entire ship. But we are on the ground, Mina said. The ship is not built to jump from a planet's surface. It is not a planet. It is a small moon. The gravity is low. The hull might hold. It is a risk, Jin admitted. But staying here is a bigger risk. Suddenly a loud bang echoed from deep within the ship. Then another. It was the sound of magnetic boots on metal. The Imperial soldiers were inside. They are here, Mina whispered. Jin grabbed a heavy wrench. We need to slow them down. You know the ship better than they do. You can lead them in circles. Use the maintenance shafts. What will you do? Mina asked. I will go to the power distribution room. It is near the engine core. I will start the sequence. He handed her a small data slate. This has a map. I have marked the route to the capacitors. I need you to do one more thing. After you lose the soldiers, you need to go to the forward battery room and manually connect the lines. Can you do that? Mina looked at the map, then at Jin's determined face. She nodded. I can do it. They split up. Mina ran down a dark corridor, her footsteps light and quick. Jin went the other way, moving toward the heart of the ship. The Imperial soldiers moved in a tight, careful formation. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness. They were trained for ship combat, but this ship was strange. It was old and dark, full of shadows and strange noises. Mina watched them from a grate in the ceiling. There were 4 of them. She moved silently through the narrow maintenance shafts above them. She knew where she was going. She had to get to the forward battery room. She found a junction box that controlled the lights for this section. She pulled a few wires. Suddenly all the lights in the corridor below went out, plunging the soldiers into darkness. The soldiers cursed. They turned on their rifle lights. While they were distracted, Mina dropped down behind them and ran. She turned a corner and was gone before they could react. Meanwhile, Jin reached the power distribution room. It was a large chamber filled with massive switches and humming power converters. This was where the ship's energy was routed. He went to the main console. It was dead. He would have to do this the hard way, by hand. He opened a large panel revealing a complex web of thick cables. He needed to reroute the power flow. He started pulling cables and connecting them to new terminals. Sparks flew and the air smelled of ozone. He spoke into his radio. Mina, I am starting the sequence. The capacitors will begin to charge. It will take about 10 minutes. You need to be at the battery room by then. Almost there. Mina's voice came back, punctuated by the sound of her running. Jin connected the final cable. A deep rising whine filled the power room. The capacitors were charging. On a small screen, a percentage number began to climb. 1%, 2%, it was too slow. He heard boots outside the door. He was out of time. The door to the power distribution room slid open. 2 Imperial soldiers stood there, their rifles raised. Step away from the console, one of them yelled. Jin looked at the power reading. 50%. It was not enough. They would never get another chance. He made a decision. He slammed his hand down on a large emergency override switch. The effect was immediate. All over the ship, every light went out. The humming of the secondary systems stopped. The ship became utterly silent and dark. For a second, the soldiers were confused. Then all the power, every bit of energy from the batteries and the secondary systems, surged into the capacitor banks. The whine became a deafening scream. The percentage on Jin's screen shot up 65%, 80%, 95%. The soldiers recovered and moved toward Jin. At that moment, from the ship's external speakers, a voice boomed out across the salvage yard. It was Mina's voice. She had reached the communications panel in the battery room. Commander Park.
Can you hear me?
she yelled, her voice amplified 100 times. You think you have won? You think the ship is junk? But you are wrong. You should have checked the salvage yards more carefully. Park, standing outside by his shuttle, looked up at the ship, his face a mask of fury. Silence that broadcast. Inside the ship, the capacitor charge hit 100%. Jin, ignoring the soldiers, reached for the final switch. The one that would dump all that stored power into the dead fusion core. One of the soldiers fired. A laser bolt seared past Jin's head, hitting the console and sending sparks flying. Jin did not flinch. He threw the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a light appeared. A deep blue light from the engine core at the center of the ship. It grew brighter and brighter, spilling out through the grates and conduits. The entire ship began to vibrate. The vibration became a shake, and the shake became a roar. The blue light turned white. The unyielding will began to rise. It was not a smooth takeoff. It was a violent, wrenching motion. The ship tore itself free from the ground, shedding rocks and metal. The Imperial soldiers inside were thrown from their feet. The ship climbed, lurching into the pale purple sky. It was not flying gracefully. It was stumbling into the air, a wounded giant finally breaking its chains. On the ground, Commander Park could only watch, his career crumbling before his eyes. The Dreadnought was in the air. It was heading for space. Inside the power room, Jin held onto a console as the ship rattled around him. He looked at the main screen. The fusion core was online, but the readings were critical. It was tearing itself apart. They had their heartbeat. But it was a heartbeat that was about to stop. The unyielding will did not fly. It escaped. It clawed its way up from the surface of Xylos, a wounded animal fleeing a trap. The climb was brutal. The ship shuddered and groaned, its ancient frame stressed far beyond its limits. Alarms blared in every corridor, their sounds overlapping into a single, constant scream. Jin held onto a console in the power distribution room. The two Imperial soldiers were on the floor, struggling to get up in the heavy gravity of the ascent. Jin did not have time for them. He had to get to the cockpit. He stumbled out into the corridor. The artificial gravity was fluctuating, making him feel heavy, then light. He used the walls to pull himself along. Over the radio, he heard Mina's voice tight with strain. Jin, the core is overheating. The readings are all in the red. I know, I am coming to you, he yelled back. He finally reached the secondary control room. Mina was in the pilot's chair, her hands gripping the controls. The main screen was a mess of warning messages. The viewport showed the blackness of space, but the stars were shaking violently. The fusion core is unstable, Mina said, her eyes wide. It will not hold. We are going to blow up. Jin slid into the chair next to her. His hands flew across the engineering console. He saw the problem. The emergency power surge had started a chain reaction in the core. They had maybe 5 minutes before it went critical. We need to shut it down, Jin said. A controlled shutdown. If we shut it down, we lose power. We will be dead in space. Park's ships will be here any minute, Mina argued. Jin looked at the navigation screen. They were in a high orbit around Xylos. He had an idea. A desperate one. We do not shut it down completely. We initiate an emergency purge. We vent the plasma from the core into space. It will give us a huge push. Like a jump, but without the calculations. We will go somewhere else. Vent the core? That could tear the ship in half, Mina said. Staying here will tear the ship in half, Jin countered. He started the sequence. It was another manual override, a series of levers and switches hidden under a safety panel. Hold on to something. He pulled the final lever. A deep, resonant shudder ran through the entire ship. At the stern, a massive emergency hatch blew open. A torrent of superheated blue-white plasma erupted from the ship's core, shooting out into space like a volcano. The unyielding will shot forward. It was not a smooth jump. It was a violent, uncontrolled lurch. Anything not tied down was thrown forward. Jin and Mina were slammed back into their seats by the incredible force. The ship tumbled end over end into the deep black. Behind them, the plasma trail faded. The moon Xylos grew smaller and smaller until it was just a pale dot. And then it was gone. The force of the push finally faded. The ship drifted, silent and dark. The main lights were out. Only the red emergency lights glowed. The roar of the engines was gone, replaced by an eerie quiet. The only sound was the slow, labored breathing of the life support system. They were alive. They were in unknown space. and they were completely lost. Mina was the first to speak. Is it over? For now, Jin said, his body aching. He checked the consoles. The core is offline. It is stable, but it is dead. We are on battery power and the secondary solar collectors. We have enough air. Not much power. What about them? Mina asked, pointing a thumb toward the door. She meant the Imperial soldiers, Jin thought for a moment. They are trapped here just like us. They are not the main problem right now. The main problem was the void outside. They had no engines, no navigation. They were a piece of driftwood in an ocean of stars. Jin spent the next hour doing a full system check. The news was bad. The fusion core was a lost cause. The thrusters were destroyed. The communication array was damaged. They could not call for help even if they knew who to call. They were alone. Mina explored the ship to assess their supplies. She found the 2 Imperial soldiers in a storage room. They had taken off their helmets. They were young, scared-looking men. They had their rifles, but they did not point them at her. Are we going to die here? One of them asked. Mina looked at them. They were just soldiers following orders. I do not know, she said honestly. That depends on your friend, Commander Park, and on us. She continued her search. In a long-forgotten cargo hold, she found something amazing. It was a stash of old pre-Empire equipment. There were spare parts, tools, and most importantly, several large military-grade power cells. They were old, but they might still hold a charge. She rushed back to tell Jin. His eyes lit up when he saw them. This is good. This is very good. With these, we can try to restart the secondary systems properly. We might even get the long-range sensors working. But we still cannot move, Mina said. One problem at a time, Jin replied. First, we need to know where we are. For 2 days, they worked. Jin connected the new power cells. The ship's systems came back online, stronger this time. The lights stopped flickering. The air felt fresher. He managed to repair the long-range sensor array. When he turned it on, they got their first piece of good news. A familiar nebula appeared on the screen. It was called the Ghost Reef, a vast cloud of gas and dust known for disrupting sensors and hiding smugglers. I know this place, Mina said, leaning closer to the screen. Traders talk about it. It is a no-man's land. The Empire rarely patrols here because their sensors do not work well inside. It is perfect, Jin said. We can hide there. But how do we get there? Mina asked. We have no engines, Jin smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. We do not need much. We have attitude control thrusters. Tiny jets for turning the ship. If we point the ship in the right direction and fire them for a long, long time, we will build up a little speed. It will be slow. But in space, slow is enough. We can drift into the nebula. It was a plan. A slow, patient plan. They spent the next week drifting. Jin and Mina worked on the ship making small repairs. The 2 Imperial soldiers, whose names were Lee and Kim, eventually decided to help. They were bored and scared. Helping was better than sitting in a room waiting to die. Jin was cautious but accepted their help with simple tasks. They were not friends, but they were not enemies anymore. They were all survivors on the same life raft. During this time, Jin kept thinking about the ship's original AI. The Empire had purged it. But maybe, just maybe, something was left. In the deepest level of the ship, he found the AI core chamber. It was a dark, cold room. In the center was a large, blackened crystal, cracked and dead, but next to it was a backup unit. A smaller, simpler processor. It was disconnected. Jin spent a day carefully cleaning it and connecting it to an independent power source. He did not expect it to work. He was just curious. When he applied power, a single, small light on the unit glowed a soft yellow. A voice thin and fragmented like a whisper from a tomb came from a speaker. Unit, online, state, function. Jin froze. He looked around. Hello? Who is there? I am the memory. The echo. The ship's log. What is your command? It was not the real AI. It was a backup of its memory and knowledge. A ghost in the machine. Jin felt a thrill. This ghost knew everything about the ship. Every system, every secret. My command is to survive, Jin said.
Can you help me?
The voice was silent for a moment, processing. Survival. Parameters accepted. Accessing. Database. The primary propulsion system is non-functional. Alternative solution exists. On Jin's data slate, A complex schematic appeared. It showed a network of pipes and conduits he had never seen before. The ship was designed with redundancy. A network of magnetic conduits can be repurposed. Using stored power, a single short-range jump can be initiated. It will drain all reserves, but it will move the ship, a jump, a real one. Not a desperate lurch, but a calculated move. Jin ran back to the control room, his heart pounding. Mina, I found a way. He showed her the schematic. The ghost AI had given them a key. They could use the ship's internal magnetic field projectors meant for containing plasma to create a temporary jump field. It was a clever, desperate trick that only the original engineers would have known. It would take all their power, but it would take them exactly where they wanted to go, deep into the heart of the Ghost Reef. They had a goal. They had a plan. And for the first time since they woke the ship, they had a real chance. The Empire had left them for dead. But in the silence of space, a ghost had just given them a map. The ghost in the machine gave them a purpose. For the next several days, the unyielding will was a hive of quiet activity. Jin, Mina, and even the two Imperial soldiers, Lee and Kim, worked together. Their survival depended on it. The plan was complex. They had to reroute the entire ship's power grid. They needed to connect the main energy reserves to the network of magnetic conduits that ran through the ship's spine. These conduits were normally used to move plasma safely from the core to the engines. Now they would be used to create a bubble in space. Jin worked in the power room, following the instructions from the AI ghost. The voice was calm and patient, guiding him through each connection. The third conduit must be linked to the secondary capacitor bank. This will create the initial field stability. Mina was the runner, moving through the ship to check each connection point. Lee and Kim helped with the heavy lifting, moving power cells and clearing blocked access panels. They were all tired, but a new energy filled the ship. It was hope. Finally, after 3 days of work, it was ready. They gathered in the control room. The main screen showed their target, the Ghost Reef Nebula. It was a beautiful, swirling cloud of purple and blue gas. It looked like a safe harbor. All systems are connected, Jin said. His hand hovered over the main power switch. This will use everything we have. If it works, we will be inside the nebula. If it does not work, we will be dead in the water. No power, no life support, Mina nodded. It is our only chance. Do it. Jin took a deep breath and threw the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a deep hum started to build. It was different from the engine sound. It was a higher pitch, like a giant metal string being pulled tight. The lights in the control room dimmed. The main screen flickered. Outside the ship, space itself began to warp. The stars around them stretched into long, thin lines of light. The purple cloud of the nebula seemed to rush toward them. It was not a jump through space. It was a fall into a hole they had created. The ship shuddered once violently. Then everything was still. The hum stopped. The main screen went black for a second, then came back online. The view was completely different. They were surrounded by a soft, glowing purple light. Thick clouds of cosmic dust drifted past the viewport. The stars were hidden. They were inside the Ghost Reef. It worked, Mina whispered. We made it. A cheer went up from Lee and Kim. They smiled, something they had not done in a long time. But their celebration was short-lived. A proximity alarm beeped softly on the console. Mina checked the sensor screen. It was fuzzy because of the nebula, but it was clear enough. Jin, we are not alone. On the screen, the outline of another ship appeared. It was not an Imperial design. It was blocky and old, covered in patches and extra engines. A scavenger ship. Then another appeared. And another. They were surrounded by a small fleet of ragged-looking vessels. A communication came through. A rough voice spoke. Unidentified Dreadnought. This is the free ship Stubborn Mule. You are in our space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Jin and Mina looked at each other. They had no weapons to power down. They were completely helpless. What do we do? Mina asked. We talk, Jin said. He opened a channel. This is the vessel Unyielding Will. We have no weapons. We are damaged. We are seeking shelter. He decided not to say they were humans. Not yet. There was a long silence. Then the voice came back. A dreadnought with no teeth? That is a new one. Stand by for boarding. A few minutes later, they heard the sound of a ship docking with their airlock. Jin and Mina went to meet them, leaving Lee and Kim in the control room. The airlock door opened. A group of people stood there. They were humans. Their clothes were a mix of old uniforms and practical gear. They were armed, but their weapons were not pointed at Jin and Mina. Their leader was a woman with a scar across her cheek. She looked at the old rusty corridor with a critical eye. "I am Captain Sue," she said. "You have a lot of explaining to do." Jin and Mina told their story. They told her about the salvage yard, about waking the ship, about escaping from Commander Park. Captain Sue listened without saying a word. When they finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It was a hard smile, but a genuine one. "You stole a Dreadnought from under the Empire's nose. And you brought it here," she laughed. "That is the best news I have heard in years." Captain Sue explained that the Ghost Reef was a hiding place for humans who resisted the Empire. They were not soldiers. They were scavengers, miners, and engineers. They survived by staying hidden and being clever. "You have brought us a symbol," Sue said, patting a rusty wall. "The unyielding will, a name from the old war. The Empire will be furious. This is a great victory for us." "But the ship is broken," Jin said. "It cannot fight." "Maybe not today," Sue said. "But we have engineers too. And you have a talent. You woke this old ghost. Together we can teach it to fight again." Weeks turned into months. The unyielding will became a project for the entire human community in the nebula. Parts were brought from hidden workshops. Engineers worked alongside Jin, learning the ship's old systems. Mina trained with the scavenger pilots, learning how to fly the large vessel in a fight. They did not repair the fusion core. It was too damaged. Instead, they did something the Empire would never expect. They powered the ship with a network of dozens of smaller stolen generators. It was messy and inefficient, but it worked. It was a human solution. One day, a scout ship returned to the nebula with urgent news. An Imperial fleet led by Commander Park was searching the outer edges of the Ghost Reef. They had captured a scavenger and learned of the hidden base. "They are coming for us," the scout said. "They have 3 frigates and a heavy cruiser." The humans were scared. They had never fought a real battle, but Jin was not scared. He looked at the unyielding will. It was no longer a rusty wreck. It was still scarred, but its lights were bright and its systems were online. He had an idea. He gathered the leaders. "We cannot win a direct fight, but we do not need to win. We just need to show them they cannot win." He explained his plan. It was risky, but it was their only chance. When Commander Park's fleet entered the nebula, they expected to find a few small ships hiding. They did not expect to find a Terran Dreadnought waiting for them. The unyielding will floated in the void, its massive shape silhouetted against the glowing gas. It looked just as it did in the history books. On the bridge of his cruiser, Park felt a chill. "The ship was supposed to be dead. Open fire! All ships, destroy that thing!" He yelled. The Imperial ships fired. Lasers and plasma bolts shot toward the Dreadnought, but the unyielding will did not fire back. It did not move. The weapons hit its hull, scorching the armor but doing little real damage. The ship's distributed power system meant there was no single core to target. Then a message broadcast from the Dreadnought. It was Jin's voice. "Commander Park, you tried to outlaw us. You tried to forget us. But we are still here. You should have checked the salvage yards more carefully." As he spoke, something else happened. All around the Imperial fleet, other ships appeared from behind the gas clouds. They were not warships. They were scavenger ships, mining barges, and old transports. They were small and weak. But there were dozens of them. They did not fire a single shot. They just turned on their lights, creating a sea of tiny stars around the Imperial fleet. It was a show of force. A show of numbers. A show of unity. Park saw it on his screen. He was surrounded. His powerful cruiser could destroy many of them, but not all. And the Dreadnought was still there, a silent, unbreakable wall. He realized the truth. This was not a battle he could win. The humans were not just hiding. They were building. And they had a symbol now. A symbol that would inspire others. "Commander," his officer said. "Their Dreadnought is powering up its engines." It was a bluff. The unyielding will had no real engines, but Park did not know that. He saw the energy readings from the patchwork generators and thought it was the main core coming online. He made his decision. It was a decision that would end his career, but it would save his fleet. "All ships," he said, his voice defeated. "Retreat." The Imperial ships turned and left the nebula. The humans watched them go. A great cheer erupted over the comms channels. Inside the control room of the unyielding will, Jin and Mina stood together. They watched the Imperial fleet disappear. "It is over," Mina said. "For now," Jin replied. "But we have shown them we are here. We have shown them we are not broken." He looked out at the small ships all flying near the Dreadnought, their lights shining like fireflies. They were no longer just survivors. They were a community. They had a home. And they had a guardian. The Galactic Empire had outlawed human tech. But in a forgotten salvage yard, a mechanic had found a promise. And that promise had become a future.